वा गणपतिगं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनः शृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् महागणपतये नमः। निकामे निकामे नः पर्जन्यो वर्षत्वित्याह निकामे निकामे हवै तत्र पर्जन्यो वर्षति यत्रैतेन यज्ञेन यजन्ते फलिन्यो न ओषधयः पच्यन्तामित्याह फलिन्यो हवै तत्रौषधयः पच्यन्ते यत्रैतेन यज्ञेन यजन्ते योगक्षेमो नः कल्पतामित्याह कल्पते हवै तत्र प्रजाभ्यो योगक्षेमः यत्रैतेन यज्ञेन यजन्ते।
Thank you, Niranjanacharya, for those divine vibrations. It's my pleasure and privilege to give a brief introduction of our esteemed guest, speaker of today, Yogacharya Rakesh, and also about our initiative called Tattvamasi. Tattvamasi was founded about 8 years ago by few similar-minded and passionate scholars who deeply value and pursue the essence of ancient Indian wisdom and knowledge heritage. What started as a small effort grew to become an institution which has mentored over 780 aspirants from across the globe. Classes on Vedic scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, Durga Saptashati, Sahasranamas, and many such texts are taught and discussed at the regular sessions. And the workshops and seminars, discussion forums are all our parts of our academic arena. Jignasa is one among the recent initiatives where we have discussions and interactive sharings of thoughts on various topics connected to the various concepts and their modern applicabilities. Today, we present our Yogacharya, our yogic perspectives in modern lights as our Yogacharya perceived. Today's speaker, Rakesh Acharya, he is one among the students of Veda Vijnana Gurukulam, where he studied the fundamentals of yoga, Veda, Vedanta. With his unquenchable passion for the yoga and well-guided knowledge, he co-founded Samyak Yoga on the bank of Kaveri in 2011. And he has been teaching yoga, its philosophies, for at least 15 plus years in Samyak Yoga and many other prestigious institutions. Over 1,800 yoga aspirants from across the globe have been benefited intense yoga training under his guidance. Our Yogacharya Rakesh has a great proficiency in all three styles of yoga, namely Hatha Yoga, Vinyasa Yoga, and Ashtanga Krama. Being an ever supportive friend and a motivating mentor and great philosopher, His association is unique and valuable gift for us at Tatvamasi. Today, we are all fortunate enough to hear his perspective on the topic of abundance and simplicity. I would request Rakesh Acharya to share his thoughts and insights on the topic. Dhanyawada. Over to Rakesh Acharya. Just a small note before we begin. We shall have a small question and answer session after the talk. Kindly messages the questions during this 1 hour. Thank you.
Vanim Vande Vibhutaye. Congratulations everyone on this beautiful occasion of International Day of Yoga. When we were discussing what should be the right title, what should be the right topic to discuss today, the very first thing that came into everybody's mind was this: abundance and simplicity. Because this 1 year has been around 14 months. This has been a greatest learning curve for everyone. A lot of things that we were doing without even knowing many times, and this 14 months gave us the time to introspect during the COVID-19 situation, and a lot of us have changed our perspectives, and there is a lot of churning that is happening inside. So keeping this introspection time in mind, we thought it could be wonderful if we discuss some ideas of Patanjali, because most often in Indian ways, we always say, like, if there is a discussion on something and somebody gives a very good deep thought, and we say, don't give me philosophy. Okay, this is like a problem and we have to find a solution. Don't give me a philosophy. Because we always think philosophy is something that is just only for the discussion. It is not for the practice. It is not for the daily life. But if you really look at the deep layers of what Patanjali is saying, this is highly valuable, and it is not for the future, like after 10 years. It is right now. I can get the benefit of what he is saying if I understand properly. Right now I get the benefit of it. So we thought maybe we can look at his ideas to the most closer ideas as he says, and see if we can get some benefit in our daily life right now. So before we understand what he is trying to say, we need to understand the background of it. If you observe ourselves in our daily life, for example me, I have 2 layers in my existence. One is my character. My character is most often a lot of self-help gurus, even the spiritual teachers say that my character is only visible to me. Most often nobody around me doesn't know that my character is known when no one is around, not even Zoom camera. So if I'm there in a room when there is no one around, nobody is looking at me, what I am at that time, that is my character, that is expressed there as my character. There is something called this, you can understand as character. The other one is most often confused with the character, that is personality. My personality is different from my character. So what is my personality? Personality is, for example, with me, I have 2 kids. So I am a parent, I am a father to those 2 kids. That's the role I am playing. I am husband to somebody, I am son to someone. So I'm playing different roles with different people. I'm teacher with a few people, so I'm playing a role. When I'm playing a role, I will not be the same between these two different layers of my life. So with my daughters I'm different, with my parents I'm different, with my students I'm different, because I'm playing the role of a teacher, of a son. So it's not exactly the same. So when I'm playing the parent, I may be sometimes strict, I may be playing, so it's totally a different ball game compared to when I'm teaching someone. So this is my personality, which keeps on changing from morning to evening until the whole night. Everything changes depending on the situation and depending on people who are involved at that time. Whereas my character doesn't change. The character remains as it is throughout this as a link. So this is the foundation, the base on which you have a personality that is expressed. Now, this is simple, got it. So what's the whole issue here? Now the issue will be, the conflict arises where my character is different from my personality. Let's say I am a very shy person by nature. As a character, I'm very shy. I don't like to speak, I don't like to go around, I don't like to be in the race, if that is my character by nature. But still my society tells me that you have to be on stage. Maybe by profession there is no other way. If I'm a teacher, I'm speaking, I'm on stage all the time. Or maybe because the social structure is such that I have to be in the race, so there is no option, but I don't like to be. Now my character is totally different from my personality, then there is a huge conflict. You might see this every time whenever we go to office and we work there. When I'm working in the office, I'm a totally different person. I have to be, because I'm paid for. I cannot change this. And when I come back, I just feel like the whole day is over. Thank God. And when I sleep, I feel like I want this sleep forever, for a very long time, because after finishing the sleep, the moment I open my eyes, I have to get ready now to run in the race of life again. So I just want, when we are collapsing on the bed, and that's why you can see that people, we look at the phone, or we look at the book, and we just don't want the night to end, because the morning starts and I have to run. Why I get so tired for the whole day? This is such a beautiful life, right? So there is no point why I'm getting tired. I'm getting tired because I am playing the role which I don't like to. If I have my character played, my character is expressing through my personality, and I'm not putting a mask, in that case I will enjoy. For example, in my case, fortunately, I didn't really want like this. It happened, and then when I turn back, everything happened for the great. So I really love this profession. This is my passion. I don't really look at this as a profession. So I'm ready to teach at 6:30. I'm ready to teach at 10 o'clock. For that matter, I have some classes almost finishing at 10 o'clock in the night. And I really enjoy my life like this. And I don't look at this as a work now. So from morning to evening, an 8-hour work, a 6-hour work. It's not. I can teach anytime if I know the subject. But I can teach anytime because I love this. This is my passion that turned into a profession. So obviously everybody says you have to turn your passion and all, but the root of it is when I have to put my mask and I have to play a different role, and my personality is different from what I am, that's where I get really tired. Now, Patanjali gives very simple ideas of how to nurture my personality and how to nurture my character. And most often what we did, I believe some of you are elders here, you might know very well that what we did with this kind of wisdom is, a lot of great texts. Maybe you have a Gita at home and you may have some volumes of Upanishads. And on those days, we used to do Saraswati Puja, worshipping the goddess of knowledge. And what we used to do is we keep them in the worship place, in the puja place, all these amazing texts. We never open and bring that into our life. We think this is very sacred and should be kept there. So that is the whole issue. When he says yama and niyama, maybe it is sounding already, yeah, we know. Yama and niyama, asana, pranayama, ashtanga yoga of Patanjali, we know this. There is nothing special about it. But he is such a genius that when he is explaining yamas and niyamas, he is literally talking about my personality and my character ethical code of conduct. Now, when you look at yama, the very first one, he is talking about the personality. Ahimsa, the non-violence. Satya, being honest. Asteya, absence of stealing. We'll come back to each one in detail. Brahmacharya, moving or in touch with the consciousness. And aparigraha, acquiring less. So if you observe all these, from non-violence to acquiring less, this is how I connect my life with the society around. So if I have these perspectives, these are my code of conduct, then I live a better life with the people around. This is my social life. So in order to get my social life right, I need to follow these. They're very, very simple. But the beauty of these explanations, they are connected inside out. You can't really practice this only as a social life. It changes your character too. For example, ahimsa, non-violence. Rakesh, what is so special about non-violence? We know this, right? Don't kill people. So, we are running the teacher training course, and I was just saying last week about ahimsa that most of the time when we are practicing ahimsa, we are not really practicing ahimsa because we like to. We are practicing ahimsa because there is a police around. Many a times you might have thought of killing someone. I mean, not with a gun, but maybe you thought of it. I'll kill this guy. But then we know, because we are social beings and there is a police around and you can be put in, in jail. So you don't want to. You don't want to kill, not because you don't really want to from the core of your heart. Situation makes sometimes. Now, ahimsa is the stage, is not just absence of killing, right? So that's physical one. It is not just harming someone. It's more than that. It's in the thought process. Yeah, we know, nothing special about it. But if you really cultivate not even harming in your thought process, in your speech, right? Kayena, vacha, manasa, in all the three layers, that is making a huge difference in my social life, and it is also making a huge difference in my character. This is a bridge between these two. Not just harming physically, but not even through my speech. I always say, I come from a village nearby Sringeri. This is connected to the coastal region. Those who are having the roots in the coastal region may know that most often they are very, very honest, very straightforward, around, you can say, in Udupi, Mangalore, in that region. And I always have the discussions with people around there that they are so honest that they can say things on your face. So if they don't like something, they say, no, I don't like it. So what you said was totally wrong. No. Now why should we do this? Like everything on the face. You being honest doesn't give the permission to hurt someone. So we say, like, I'm just like completely honest with people. I don't make any drama. I'm not putting the mask. And sometimes what happens is I just say on the people's face and they feel really bad. But I can't really help. I'm not a drama person. It is not really being dramatic, but you are being wrong here because you are rude. You can be honest, but at the same time, you should practice ahimsa. Here, you are hurting someone. For example, today is International Yoga Day. So my wife, I finish this talk and I go back, and my wife is getting ready for her event, maybe in yoga. And she's getting ready, and she comes with the beautiful attire, and she asks me like, how do I look? If it is genuinely bad, I would say it is not really looking good. But maybe I don't really like it, but she looks good. I don't really like that whole cloth, maybe. And I say, oh no, you look pathetic. I don't think you should go like this, you know. So if I say on her face, being honest, I'm also actually hurting. So this is not really being honest. At the same, I'm losing my practice of ahimsa. I could have been polite, sweet, kind, and then put the right words in explaining how does she look. She doesn't really look good, so I have to say in a very polite manner. It could have been possible. So me hurting in the name of being honest is not practicing ahimsa. So how do I use this language ability so beautifully? In one of the places, Patanjali's idea, in a different place, in explaining Sanskrit grammar, he says, even a beautiful way of using the language can take you towards samadhi. Any language, if you're using it so beautifully, it can take you towards samadhi. We thought it's about asanas, meditation, pranayama, and you say using a language? Yeah. Using a language, what he meant is, if you use a language beautifully, that means it is crafting your mind. So if you have to put a beautiful sentence, it has to be in the thought process. If it is in the thought process, it is cultivating the emotions. If it is cultivating the emotions, it is purifying the mind. See how the link is going to the mind, and that's where it is purifying. It is a form of meditation leading to samadhi. So even the way I speak, that can change the thought process. So that's about the speech. And good speaking, like kind, beautiful sentences, making it nicer, that can change the thought process, and even my thinking I should change. So non-violence is in all the three layers. Me being undisturbed, not harming even in the worst situation, not thinking bad about others, not thinking of anything that is misery to anyone, including me. And non-violence is not just about others, even if I am harming my body. For example, in the name of religion, in all religions we have this, that we punish the body, and somewhere we borrowed this idea, maybe from some corner of the world, we borrowed this, that if I punish myself, I'm pure. So it can be in many forms. If I'm intermittent fasting is good, I don't say anything about that's really good. But if you don't eat food for a very long time, like because I punish the body, I become pure. Not really. This is also himsa. You are punishing the body in the name of tapas, in the name of disciplining. So it is a very thin line that you should know whether I am disciplining my body or punishing. If you are punishing, that is himsa and not the practice of ahimsa. So you should look very carefully between those two. So that is your ahimsa. Satya, being honest. Rakesh, we know this. There is nothing special about it. Everybody should be honest, and we also tell our kids that you should be honest. No, being honest is not just saying the facts. So today, sun is rising around at 6 o'clock. It was already a sunrise when we started. That's a fact. By saying a fact, you are not really being honest. It is just an expression of the fact. So you are not saying a lie. But if you go to the root of it, being honest is being connected to my heart. I am being honest, I am connected to my heart. Many a times we live in the virtual reality thinking that this is This is real. I'm creating, I'm not saying virtual in the sense Zoom virtual, but I'm creating a reality, the world in my head. It doesn't exist. For example, when in India we have this habit, I think it's pretty much everywhere, that if I do something like this, what will my neighbors think, or what my colleagues at my workplace will think? So I don't want to take this risk. I don't want to do this because people will think that I'm not a right person, I'm not a good person, people will think that I'm weak. So in too many ways we think how others will think. And the reality is nobody is giving a damn. They have no time to think about. You could be a talk of a minute when they are having tea, they are sitting down, they have nothing to do, and maybe they are thinking, yeah, I heard Rakesh was doing this, yeah, so bad, yeah. It is just a talk of a minute maybe, and nobody really cares, because we are also like that. Everybody is like this. We care about us. So all other things are maybe entertainment, maybe a small discussion, nothing more than that. This is a reality that is only in my head, not in the real life. But I am living that reality and I am not connected to myself, not connected to my heart. That's where the practice of Satya misses. If I really practice Satya, I am being honest to myself. I look at the reality and I get connected to my reality. This doesn't exist. So something doesn't exist, I shouldn't be really worrying about. So that's more into Satya, not just being factful. That there is a lockdown today, there is no lockdown today. So we say this is not really being honest. This is being factful. I know the fact, I'm not hiding it, which is good. But more than that, am I connected to my heart? Am I really listening to what my heart says? Am I following what my heart says? You might say, Rakesh, that's a very difficult task. I have no idea. Many a times I do this and then I realize that was not my heart saying. But that's the whole story, about this whole practice. This is not about what, like my heart says this. My heart might say, right now I assume this is what it is saying, and then I keep on exploring. It is a self-discovery. There is no perfect answer that this is what I want. And again, maybe when we come to 2025, you want something else, and which is completely fine. Who says that you should want the same thing over the decade? It changes. Life is an experiment, and I want to make sure that I want the right thing and I'm listening to what my heart says. That is Satya. Asteya, like I assume one of the highly underrated quotes that Patanjali says. Asteya, steya is stealing. Asteya, absence of stealing. Rakesh, what are you saying? We know, obviously we teach the kids also. We are not stealing. You are not physically stealing. But was there any time when you stole somebody's credit? It could be in many ways. Maybe in a workplace where we work in the office and somebody is supposed to be getting that. He deserves the credit, but I took that credit maybe. Or our elders used to say, if you're in front of the food and you should take only what you can eat, don't take more than what you can, because you are basically snatching somebody's food. That belongs to someone. If I have the power to buy and I have more money and that's why I buy there and I bring that food on my plate, maybe this belongs to somebody else. So I'm trying to snatch that's stealing, right? Maybe if I'm not the deserving candidate, but I thought maybe I can use the influence, maybe I can use maybe my oratory skills, I can speak beautifully, so I go in front of everyone and show that I did this, so I need the credit, and I snatch somebody else's credit. That is stealing. So stealing, not necessarily just stealing somebody's objects, maybe sometimes it happens with the kids, by parents, maybe that the mother is doing all the work in a particular situation, but the kids might think it is all the father, because we had this influence of patriarchy, and many a times it happens that the credit always goes to the father. Belated happy Father's Day in advance, but in the name of Father's Day, we don't want to take the credit of the mother who did something. And when the kids are appreciating, who doesn't want appreciation? So you will be like, I was the one. Sometimes it happens. Now that everybody has the ability to buy, it is not only restricted to fathers. Sometimes it still feels like, for example, my daughter, the elder one is like around 7, and she is like, when there is a new cloth, she used to think, because I always go out and do stuff, and she used to think that thank you, Papa, so this is a great t-shirt, I love this, thank you for buying. And I'm like, sometimes it is not bought by me, it's my wife. And it can look very simple, but in the long run, she will think, my daughter will think that I am very powerful because I'm the one who is buying, and she should be very good with me only. With her mother, it doesn't matter, because anyway, the father is the one who is buying. And she starts looking at this hierarchy of the father having the abilities to buy, the mother not having the abilities to buy. So I used to say like, no, that one I bought, this one your mom bought it. So I want to be very clear that we both are doing this. It's not only me who is doing it. Because you need to give that credit. This may look very, very simple, but in the long run, this is how we get the impression of the abilities of my parents. So my mom can do this, my dad can do this. This is a hierarchy. So stealing, absence of stealing is so deep in its practice. Many a times, suddenly we get an appreciation and you don't want to lose the appreciation. And you're like, that was amazing, thank you so much. And you're like, yeah, okay, I'm good, I'm really good. So that's why people are appreciating. May not be. For example, in the classes, whenever I get in the physical classes, for example, pretty much every month we do the courses here, and after the courses people say like, okay, that was really nice and we loved it and knowledge was good, but does it really belong to me? No, as right in the beginning they were introducing, we come from a Gurukula, that's where we learnt all this, and I was not prepared to learn this. I didn't even know. It was not a choice that for many other students of Gurukula, they made a choice. For me, it was not even a choice. I didn't even know. I didn't even like it. But somehow I went there and it was kind of like I was made to learn all those, and I loved it later. So the credit has to go to my teacher and that institution. Not really. Of course, I also studied quite okay. Not very well, because some of my classmates are here, so I can't say I was very good at it. I did, so some credit can come to me, but not all the credit for the knowledge that we have, because it was my teacher who made me what I am today. So I always want to make sure whenever I get that appreciation, thank you, but in my mind I'm saying it belongs to my teacher. So I want to make sure that I keep this honesty inside, Satya, in the practice of Asteya. See how they are interconnected. So, non-violence, ahimsa, being honest, Satya, absence of stealing, Asteya. Right? And the most controversial, most misunderstood one, Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya, yeah, celibacy, yeah. So before the marriage, not really. Brahmacharya, Brahma, consciousness, Charya, moving towards. Moving towards the consciousness. Am I moving towards the consciousness? Yeah, we move into many different places. No, not that moving, but moving towards consciousness is moving inwards. So when I'm moving inwards, I'm trying to understand what I really, this is coming back to connection with honesty, with Satya, doing what I really love to do, listening to what I really love to listen. Rakesh, what is so special? We all love to listen to what we love to listen. There is nothing special about it. This is the time where a lot of things we do thinking that we love this. You may not be really loving it. For example, there are many songs that we listen to, such a simple thing, but you may not really love it. Ask yourself, do you really love that song? But the beauty of, unfortunate thing of this life that we have, which is highly influenced by the digital world around, that there will be a song that is played again and again, whether you put on TV, you take your phone, you are on Facebook, the song comes there, you are on YouTube, the song comes there. And after a while, there is a kind of a rhythm that is created. And then before you even know, you start humming the song. You may like the song sometimes. You may not if you are just listening to that song with full attention. But because it has created an imprint in your mind, so by the time even you know whether you like or not, you're already humming it. It makes you like it. So if I'm moving inwards, I cut off the things that are not really useful to me. I move inwards. So it is knowing that, we all know this, that the external objects do not give the happiness, it is something that is inside. And for happiness, so I don't have to explain that, we all know that external sources do not give the happiness. There was a talk somewhere I was in, and there was a monk who was sitting there and giving the talk, and he was saying, so we know all this, yes, but do we want to make money? Yes. So we know that we know that external objects do not give the happiness, but we still need the external objects. The whole point is knowing that the dependency on the external objects should not be there. It is not that we want to get rid of the objects around, but just knowing a very practical, regular practice, training my mind that the external objects means everything, including the body, is not the source of my happiness. It gives a freedom. For example, for many people, it happened that during the beginning of lockdown, when it happened for 2 to 3 months, and we were not able to go out fully and COVID was hitting, a lot of people who were used to traveling a lot, they are struck. So they are like feeling miserable because I just love to travel, now I can't travel. Anything that is external, anything that has a source of happiness, if I think in that way, and that can end. This is the nature's rule. Anything that has a beginning, that has an end. It's so simple. I have a body that is going to end, right? I'm in a relationship that is going to end. Either we get separated or one of us will die, and that's how it ends. And this is the harsh truth of life. If it has a beginning, it has an end. And if it has an end, I shouldn't be thinking that that will give me happiness, because that is limited. So it's so simple. So if I can train myself, the whole Ashtanga Yoga, the entire practice that he is trying to explain in the Yoga Sutras is this: train yourself so that my wife is not the source of happiness. Me living with my kids is not the source of happiness. They can trigger the happiness, and there is nothing wrong in it. It is just that should not be my source. The moment these, like having a great food on my plate and I'm enjoying the food, this is the source of happiness, that's where the problem lies. I love to have the food, but that should not be the source. What do you mean? I should be able to live If tomorrow that kind of food is not there, I'm okay. If this relationship is not there, that will not change the state of mind. I'm sure you all know the king Janaka, the father of Sita. So there is a small incident about, we say, not for many kings, but for Janaka, the father of Sita, father-in-law of Rama, Lord Rama. For him we say he was a Rajarshi. He was a Raja Rishi. Not for everyone we say that. There were so many kings, but for Janaka we say. The reason, there is a small story about him, that there was a monk who was visiting, a yogi who was visiting the kingdom of Janaka. When he visits, so obviously, Janaka gives the main throne, he asks him to sit down there, they have a great discussion. And in the whole process, monk, because a lot of people have told him that he's a yogi, the king is a yogi. And this yogi is kind of a little jealous, kind of like, how can he be a yogi? He's living in a kingdom, right? He's living in the palace. You can call yourself a yogi if you're living in the palace. What is that? And then the yogi says, Janaka, I've always heard about you that you are a yogi living in the form of a king. Do you really agree with this? Or do you think you can be a yogi like me? Janaka says, I don't know what everybody thinks. I'm not that kind of a yogi, but I do practice yoga, and I like that whole path of life. And then he says, okay, then do one thing. Give me the palace, you leave the place, because anyway, if you are a yogi, you have no attachment. And Janaka literally stands up and says, okay, you sit on the throne, I will leave. And he starts leaving. And the yogi says, no, please sit down. Then Janaka reverses the question. Can you give me the bag that you are carrying? There is a stand that the yogis used to. If you look at the old picture, there is a stand on the hand, like just below the hand. So, and there is a kamandalu to carry that holy water for the practices. And king says, give me that and I will leave. And yogi says, no, that belongs to me. And Janaka says, see, this is the difference. It doesn't matter whether you are in a palace or in the cave. What matters is the way you practice detachment. See, I'm in the palace, I'm ready to leave, because I know I'm just in the palace. I'm not the owner of the palace. I'm here to serve the people. So if I have to leave, I have no issues. I will leave right now, because I'm here to serve. It's not like for my enjoyment I have the palace. You have only like 2 pieces of clothes in a bag, and I'm asking you only this much. Give me the bag and I will leave. And you say, I can't. You have the ownership. So you have an attachment there. So it doesn't matter whether you have a palace or a bag. If you have an attachment, you have an attachment. So it's not the external appearances. If you know the source, that palace doesn't give me the happiness. If you look at the yoga symbols, you may have seen like many yoga institutions, and pretty much 90% of the institutions will have the logo with a lotus. Because lotus has a lot of significance in yoga. One of the significances of the lotus is, now if you have a good DSLR camera, and this is quite early in the morning, so tomorrow if you're in the morning, if you're taking the camera and going, if you have a lotus around, and if there is a water drop on the lotus petal and you see some sunrise on the side, and if you're taking a picture, it's like a wonderful picture, and you can see that drop of water on the petal, and it looks so beautiful. And then after taking the picture, tap the petal, okay, and then take the picture again. So you will see no mark of that water drop on the petal in the second picture. That's how the practice of detachment should be, that you hold as if you are holding for lifetime, but if you have to leave, you will leave as if it never existed. That's the beauty of it. It is not like going away from something. It's detachment is only done when, because you have to leave the family. It's not. It's like, that relationship, for example, is forever, and then it never exists. So you live in such a way that you are fully into it, but if you have to leave it, you leave it as if it never existed. That should be the state of the mind. This kind of practice is called brahmacharya. Knowing that external objects do not give the happiness, and training the mind so that you get that freedom. So even if you are not able to travel around, that's not giving you the happiness. You can train yourself, and sitting at home meditating also you can have the same level of happiness, giving the freedom. So it's very useful. It's not like you have to practice brahmacharya because yoga says. Though it is difficult, let us practice. Not really. It is very useful. It is like a level of the mind that can be happy without any objects or with all the objects. Doesn't matter, the mind remains same. Last one is aparigraha, not acquiring a lot. We were discussing during the teacher training here, and I was reminded by a TED talk that was, I think that is available on YouTube now. And there is an old guy, he's around, I believe he's around 75, and he's such a wonderful, wise man, and he's talking about, I think he's little more than that, and he's sitting, he's explaining about how life has changed to him, nothing related to yoga, he's just explaining how life has changed. And he says when he was in his beginning of the adulthood, when he was around 19-20, he used to go to the shops to buy some jeans. So on those days, he says somewhere in the 1950s, I believe, and he says, I go to a shop, I want jeans. I say, give me jeans. And they used to give maybe, do you want black or blue? What is your size? And he says, okay, this is my size, I want blue. And he gives the blue. You take the jeans and you come back. And it doesn't fit. It fits really bad. The older ones, because there are not so many varieties. So you put the jeans and it's like, sometimes fortunately, sometimes it fits. Sometimes it fits up, but it doesn't fit down there. Sometimes it's like, it's okay when you walk, but you can't really sit down. It's a little complicated, but that's how the jeans is. It's fine. And he says, now back to the modern time, now when I go to the shop, when I ask, give me a jeans, they tell me like, okay, you have this jeans, this jeans, and there are so many varieties. There are so many colors, there are so many structures. There are high waist, low waist, there are big at the bottom, very thin, there is ripped jeans, the colors are also so many. And he says, I'm confused. And then the guy in the shop says, sir, try this, sir, try this. And for a jeans, I'm spending like 2 hours. I'm fully confused. But I'm so happy that there are so many options available. But the problem is, once I finalize, okay, maybe this one, and I buy this, when I'm coming back, I think like maybe the last one that was in the corner, I should have tried that. I think that was fitting better. I have these t-shirts. With these t-shirts, maybe not this pack. I'm unhappy even after having hundreds of options. And in that talk, he says that why I'm like this. When I had no options, I was pretty happy. When I have so many options, I'm unhappy. So options are not giving me the happiness. So not having the ability to choose was giving me the happiness. So what's wrong? Now here, acquiring less is a very beautiful way. Nowadays we have this idea of being minimalist. This is how until the last generation, entire generations used to live. Maybe sometimes out of choice, maybe sometimes there was no other option because of less money, but they had a content life. If I go back to my village and I have some uncles there who are not very much exposed to any social media, they have no clue, and what they do is just farming and come back. They don't have ambitions in life. So I used to feel in my teenage and when I was exposed to yoga, this whole philosophy, everything. So when I used to go back into village, I used to feel these guys, they don't grow in their life because they have no ambition. So what did they do? When I asked them, like, what do you want? This whole beautiful cliche question of corporate work life. How do you want to see yourself after 10 years? I used to ask the same kind of question to an uncle who is living in my village. Like, what do you think? What's your plan after after 5 years, after this farming and everything? Like, how do you want to build the next stage? He's like, there is no plan like that. We just live as it is. Now, whatever we have, we keep it. I have never thought about 5 years or 10 years. And I used to feel like, what's wrong with these people? They have no ambition. I'm not saying you shouldn't have ambition, but I'm just saying in terms of satisfaction, I see most satisfaction there and I don't see a lot of satisfaction in me if we compare between two. Of course, they don't have that kind of strong ambition to become something in life, but they're very, very content. They're living at the present. And I was thinking all the time in almost half of my Gurukula time that I was the one who was learning yoga. And I couldn't even see the yoga teacher back in my village in his action. He doesn't know anything about Patanjali, but indirectly he has a good practice compared to my practice. When you have so many things, nowadays it's also like a shopping is kind of a treatment to sadness. So if you want to trigger your happiness quotient, go for shopping. No, that's all. Like you go and keep on buying. Many times it could happen that if you're shifting the house, you will see a lot of those clothes that you have never seen unless like the last time that you saw them was in the shopping. So you bought it, you put it in the wardrobe and then you didn't open. You don't even know that it exists. Now when you open it, you're like, oh, I have a sweater. Oh, this was my winter wear. Oh. But now I realize, but never used it. Right? You can see this, that when I have so many things in life, this actually becomes messy. It is not a philosophical thought that you should live a simple life. It is not. It's literally, if you want an organized, systematic, goal-oriented, satisfying, fulfilling life, have less. When you have so many things, whether it is to do so many things in life or to have so many things, for example, in my workplace here, I literally don't place anything around. I keep it very, very clean. A speaker and a mouse pad and a time clock, few books around. No, I just want to keep it very clean. Nothing is there. My mind starts functioning properly. When I have too many things around, it's quite messy and it's messy in my head also. So when you're entering the room and if you have so many things, it's very difficult. So nowadays you might see even in the architecture, in designing the houses, they say keeping almost nothing in the room, very, very less items, because that creates the vastness, more freedom into my head. It's not because you want to live a simple life and because it is yoga. It's not. It's not like a spiritual life. Because I want to be very efficient in my normal life, I want aparigraha, not having a lot, having whatever I want. There is yoga never said that you should detach and have a very pessimistic, sad life. Like yoga is like this because you should be, it's kind of not having, spirituality. No, enjoy everything. Enjoy every moment of life, have everything that is needed, enjoy the great food, be in a wonderful relationship, have kids, look after them, take care, live this life, the gift called life. There is no doubt about it. But have it in such a way that you can enjoy it. If you are just in the name of enjoying, if you are putting too many things into the life, then it becomes like a dungeon. So it's messy. So make sure it is very systematic. Make sure it is efficient. That's why you don't put a lot of things. That's why you don't acquire a lot of things. So that is aparigraha. So if you look at all these, from ahimsa to aparigraha, we discussed 5 qualities. And all of them, they're just talking about how to lead a social life efficiently. A very quick note about the second stage, the character, and then we'll come back for the question and answer. So non-violence, being honest, satya, asteya, absence of stealing, brahmacharya, moving inwards, and aparigraha, acquiring less, being a minimalist. That's a better phrase to visualize. So these are 5 yamas. Niyamas, as we know, shaucha, purity, santosha, contentment, tapaha, discipline, swadhyaya, self-study, and ishvara pranidhana, self-surrender. Now, shaucha, purity. Rakesh, there is nothing special about purity. Taking shower. Hope at least we took shower today, celebrating International Yoga Day. But not just physical, shower. Take shower every time. Make a habit of taking the shower to the mind. Take a shower to the intellect also. What do I mean? As I said right in the beginning, most of the time we are not deciding what knowledge should come into us right now. So make sure that you are creating a fence around. Don't let anyone and everyone to give their knowledge to us if it is not valuable to us. So what I mean is, many a times we are in so many WhatsApp groups now, and everybody is sharing something in the WhatsApp group. And sometimes it is so damn lie, fabricated, or maybe it has nothing of a substance. And I don't even need, maybe it's a true thing, but I don't need it. What happens is, when I'm watching something that is not giving me any value, it is not adding value to my life, then it is creating some samskaras, some imprints in my head, and that will have in the long run its effect. I used to say in the trainings that, these Hollywood actors, if you are into fashion designing, it's great. Otherwise, for people like me, what the Jennifer Lopez, a Hollywood actress, what she was wearing in a Cannes Film Festival, right? I don't want to know. It's not like I hate her. It is just that I'm not interested in the fashion designing. But the worst part is, before even I don't want to know this, I am told. I open the notifications somewhere, maybe in the Google notification, in the Facebook, or in Instagram. I am told that this is what she was wearing. So like this, there is so much of information that is poured into my head, and then they will have their own impact. So sometimes I feel like the whole world is so bad, because there are so many things, bad things are coming to in my head. Obviously, we all have felt this during the Corona time. Switch off the TV and you are like, oh my God, this is so good. And you switch on, you feel like every minute people are dying, and it feels like maybe we are near the death, So creating the filter for the knowledge that I want in my head. I don't want to let anyone and everyone to get into my head and tell me this is what I should listen. No, I create a filter. I choose what I want to know, not everything that is coming to my head. If it is adding value to my life, I choose that. Because whatever goes to my head, even if it is for a 30 seconds, it is going to have its impact in the long run. We may not realize, but in the subconscious level, it will have an impact. I want to choose what I get into my head. So purity in the mental level also. The other one, this is, I think, in the name of yoga, we always have discussed about santosha. Santosha, contentment. Yeah, Rakesh, we know santosha. What is santosha? Be happy with what you have. That's true, but not fully. If I am happy with what I have, which is a great idea, I will not be craving for something that I cannot get. For example, I'm lesser than 6 feet in my height. I'm happy with what I am right now because this cannot be changed now, right? So I cannot change my height. So if I'm looking at, after looking at the Bahubali movie, and if I'm thinking like, I should be maybe 6.5 so that I look like Bahubali, I cannot really change this because this is how the structure is, right? So here I should be what I have, like I'm happy with this. So I need to accept that this is how it is. I cannot change this. My physical limitations may be, my skills, if I can upgrade, that's different. Otherwise, there are some skills that I may not be able to upgrade. So this is the level, great. But santosha is half of that, what we discussed. The other half is, I'm happy with what I have. At the same time, I'm dissatisfied because I want to get better. It is happily dissatisfied. I want to be aspiring for something that can add value to what I have. So for example, now as a yoga teacher, I'm very happy with the knowledge that I have and I'm very content. I'm not in the race to become somebody. At the same time, I don't want to teach the same things. When you meet me, even if you're taking another training after 5 years, if my teaching skills are same, if my explanations are same, then I'm not updating my knowledge. So I want to add more value to my knowledge. I want to get better with my physical fitness. I want to enhance my breathing. So a balance of both. I'm happy with what I have, what I am, and I want to aspire, I want to reach something else that can add more value to my life. If I don't get it, I'm still happy with what I have. I'm still happy with what I am, both. So santosha is a very good balance between both these. If I'm just taking only one, then the life becomes stagnant. So many a times it is misunderstood that what is santosha? I'm happy, Rakesh. Whatever I have in my life, I have no regrets, but I'm very happy. But don't you think you should do this one also? No. I'm practicing yoga. I'm very happy. In the name of santosha, maybe you are bringing stagnation to the life. Age is not a barrier. You want to upgrade your skills. You want to learn more. You have the student inside you to get more knowledge, and so that you can become a better version of what you are today. Tomorrow, you might be a better version. You get better. And this dream of getting better is a human tendency. And this should not be stopped. Why do we live for tomorrow? Because we all think, in spite of this corona and everything, in spite of the worst phases of our life, we think that my tomorrow will be better than today. Right? We all think that. So, because I have this hope that I get better tomorrow, I'm living today. So that's why I need that phase. So it's always like there is a rising sun. There is a rising sun that is happening every day, and he is showing me that after the darkness there will be a better light, and that hope keeps us alive, awake. And I want to have this. So I want to aspire. But Rakesh, what if I don't get it? That's fine. So that's where the balance is. I'm happy with what I have. I aspire to get this knowledge, but if I don't get it, still I'm happy. that won't disturb the state of happiness. Santosha is a very good balance between these two. The third one is tapas. So after purity, contentment, and then tapas, disciplining. So what is disciplining? In asana practice it happens that, in Patanjali says that you should be steady and comfortable in asanas, and then when you are practicing asana, you find it, Rakesh, this is not comfortable. Okay, I don't find anything that is closer to comfortability. I find it very hard. When you are making a new habit, for example, people say a lot that about the morning, waking up in the morning. So whenever we discuss about Brahmi Muhurta, you wake up in the morning, that's a beautiful time. Many people say, I can look at the facial expression and I find out that, Rakesh, I'm not a morning person, It's not like I don't want to wake up. My system is I'm not a morning person. Okay, this is in the system, so I can't really change it. I'm a night person, not a morning person. Of course, you will be a morning person if you have been waking up at 8 o'clock for last 20 years, or maybe at 7 o'clock. You will not be a morning person. But there is nothing called morning person. That's a habit that you have cultivated. So if you have to wake up now at 5, you will find it difficulties because you have to break the old habit to create the new habit. This is where the discipline happens. If the discipline is not there and you wake up like 2 days continuously at 5 o'clock and you are like, Rakesh, this was so terrible, I feel sleepy all the day, and you say it's a great time. I don't think any meaning to wake up. I feel like my sleep is half over. I lost my beautiful time of sleeping. You will find it difficult. So you can't be thinking that it will be amazing. I wake up in the morning, I'm meditating. It's not going to work. For the next maybe couple of months, it's not going to work. It will be difficult because you are creating a new pattern. The new system is created. You are forming a habit. That's where the discipline comes. So maybe a small anecdote from my life. This was like some around 12 years back. So I was looking at a movie and maybe like I watched a few of those things, and then somewhere there was an imprint in my head that I thought maybe I look very cool if I have a guitar, if I can play a guitar. You have a guitar and you put that guitar bag on the back and you run the motorbike and you sit and you play the guitar and everybody will be, wow, Rakesh, you're so cool. So I wanted to be that cool guy, and I thought, okay, I find a good guitar teacher, I learn guitar. And I was in search, I got a guitar teacher, I bought a new guitar, I went there and asked him like if he can teach me. And he said, and we got a discussion, he said, these are the days you should come, this is the timing, great. I went on the first day. If you have played the guitar, you have the guitar and there will be a striking chord and you have to hold it. I was like, yeah, got ready, yeah. And he was like, yeah, okay, now you have 6 strings, the last string down there, yeah, got it, yes. And he's like, okay, play it. And I'm, tang, yeah, got it. He's like, okay, I'm coming in next 15 minutes. You keep on playing this, press this string. I'm like, okay. And I'm pressing. And like, you press here because they are so thin, like you get confused which string to press. And you are like, press and tang, press, tang. I'm making this. 15 minutes. And he comes back. Rakesh, what are you doing? I'm like, it's so painful in my hand. And he says, continue. The whole first class went like this. Next day, another string. I went for the first class thinking that I will play the guitar like beautifully, like romantic, cool guy. And he's just telling me, press this, tang. It doesn't work. And after a few classes, I have the blood clot in my tip of the fingers. I feel so pathetic. And I was asking him like, no, like instead of this, can I play like as I see in the movie? And And he said, definitely Rakesh, but it will take around 4 to 6 months. Ah, really? Like 4 to 6 months? That's too long. Disciplining needs time. So what you see is the result of a disciplined practice of maybe 5 years or maybe 10 years. But what I thought was, looking at the result, I thought this is what I want. So before I become that, I need to discipline myself. Tapas is the discipline, and it is not comfortable, but when you are forming a new habit, make sure that you know what are you trying to create. Patterns are very hard to break. So if something is becoming a habit, if reading before going to the bed is becoming a habit, it's amazing. You know that it is going to give you good results. Maybe you have food, and then after a while, one day you felt like little lazy, you had to go to bed. At lunchtime, you had lunch and you went to bed. It's fine. Next day, you felt the same. And if it is becoming 3-4 days, make sure that you know what you are doing, because it is going to become a habit. After a few days, you can't control. Now, it becomes a must thing. Many times taking the phone to the washroom, it has become a new habit for many. In the beginning, it is just that there is a space and you have time and you have the phone. Let me check my, some emergency thing. Then it becomes a habit. You cannot go to the washroom without the phone. Habits are very dangerous. So you should know which type of habit you are forming. It's great. It's highly beneficial if it is a right habit. Formation is in the tapas. Swadhyaya we know, self-study. Not just the self-study, studying the self also. I need to watch myself. In yoga, we never looked at the solutions only. Solution comes at the last part. If there is an issue in my life, like maybe my perspective, maybe the way I'm not getting the fruit, whatever it is, we always emphasized to look at what's happening. Do not worry about the conclusion. Don't conclude, okay, this is my problem. Don't conclude. That may not be your problem. That might be your strength. Do you really watch yourself? Watch. How are you responding in the situation? How are you living? How are you thinking? Observing myself, that is studying the self. Not just self-study, studying the self. Self-study is great, but just don't limit. Studying the self is the most important part. The last part, and we'll come back to some questions. Ishvara Pranidhana, surrendering, self-surrender, surrendering to someone who is supreme. I always think life not as a prose, it's like a poetry. So sometimes 2 plus 2 is 4, sometimes 2 plus 2 is 20, sometimes 2 plus 2 is 0. You work really hard, you get the fruit. Sometimes you work really hard, you never get the fruit. It's not like you work hard and you get the fruit. I don't know what is coming up in my life in the next moment. So there is a saying that life is more fiction than the fiction stories. So if you look back at your own life, there are so many things that you find it hard to believe that they have happened. So in that case, when I don't have a control on the fruit of my work, it is good to surrender to anything. It doesn't matter whether I'm surrendering to Shiva or Krishna or any other god, it doesn't matter, as long as my head is going down, because that humbleness, it's not really for the god, but when I'm being humble, that brings some satisfaction that maybe he has a better version, maybe he has a better idea for me, maybe he's teaching me a lesson through this situation that is not going really well. So whether it is good or bad, I will be stable in my mind. So obviously, Ishvara Pranidhana is a great practice. All these 5 practices that we discussed in Niyama, from purity, contentment, santosha, discipline, tapas, swadhyaya, self-study, and Ishvara Pranidhana, surrendering the self to the Supreme. So all these are my character ethics. if my personality and character, if they are not going in two directions, if possible, if they are only one, like I am the way I am out everywhere, if there is hardly any difference, life becomes very simple. And we had this topic that, abundance and simplicity, it's not really abundance and simplicity, it is simplicity that is the real practice of simplicity is in that abundance. It is that abundance is in the practice of simplicity. If you practice being simple, simple means not messing the life, not having a lot of chaos, having a systematic life, disciplining the right habits, keeping the things that are very much needed, not everything that is just because I want them, so clearing them off, having the head, the mindset that's very calm, stable, and focusing on what I really want. When you look at Satya, connecting to my heart, I'm not focusing on everything that the society demands or maybe people around think that it is important in my life. No, I focus on the most important thing that I want to achieve because this is fulfilling. So if you look at all the 5 yamas and niyamas, it is in the simplicity, you have the abundance, you have the magnificent, you have a lot in being simple. Life is so rich when you live simple. Simple doesn't mean that you should live in the poverty. Simple doesn't mean that you should not make a lot of money. Make a lot of money. But make sure that that's not the source of your happiness. Make sure it is not going to the head. You know how to, last point, we know how to convert that money into happiness. That needs a lot of wisdom. A lot of people have money, but only some people know how to translate this, convert this into the right happiness. Some people, in the making of money itself, they find happiness. Some people spend it in so luxury, lavishly, that it makes no sense. But only some wise people have this ability to turn the wealth called money into the right happiness. Spending in maybe good books, enjoying great music, spending in the beautiful, very tasty, healthy food, investing in the right relationships. So only some people have that wisdom to convert that wealth into happiness. So if I have that maturity, then living even in simplicity, that can be very abundant. That's a rich life. That's a quality filled life. But for that, I need to be very conscious of how I'm living my life, and I should know which one should be a part of my life, which one shouldn't. Just summarizing, it is in the simplicity you have the abundance. Sorry, it feels like I'm giving a preaching. Om. Any questions?
Yes, Dhanyavada. So we have got
I think you are mute.
enthusiastic participants here. So the first question is there any such order as Patanjali suggested, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, so on, to attain samadhi? Because Patanjali seems to stick on the order. Is there any such insight?
And others here, Karthik?
One second. Can you hear me now? Hello? Hello? Namaste. Rakesh,
We
sir,
can
can you
hear.
hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Or maybe I'm the only one who is not hearing.
So we have a question from many participants here. So the first question is, I repeat once again, is there any such order as Patanjali suggested as Yama, Niyama, and Asana, and so on to attain a Samadhi? Because Patanjali seems to stick on the order. Okay. Maybe there is a connection problem.
Ji, can I ask a thing?
Please go on.
See, when we're talking about Santosh, it was very beautiful. The whole thing, the explanation is very nice and very practical. But see, when you're talking about Santosha, the contentment.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Ji, now can you hear me?
Maybe it is something from my end that's not visible, like not audible, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Everybody else can hear you. So if you can type the question, that will be better.
Gee, I don't
I'm
know.
the only one who is not being able to listen. Oh, that's a long question. That's a good question. Great. Okay. I'm audible to everyone? Now that's the first thing that I need to ask. Great. Now there is a practice of aparigraha, right? Where it's minimalism is an idea. Definitely, like that goes very much similar to what we discuss as aparigraha. So that's an idea, but along with that, it is being ambitious. Maybe that's a wrong word, but knowing what I want and achieving the dreams is a human tendency. So you can't stop that. You should know, you should have the dreams to achieve. So this is where we get, these are not two different things, like being satisfied, being content with what I have, like practicing aparigraha, having less, but having the dream to achieve something. So it is not because I'm not complete, but if I don't dream of, then I don't become a better version tomorrow. Most often we always have been thinking that these two are like extremes. So the moment I say simplicity, everybody thinks simplicity means to be living with 2 pairs of clothes. Not really. Simplicity is not being just simple. It is not messed with with too many ideas. It is not, for example, being simple is also, we have so many different concepts that we tag ourselves with. For example, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm a very spiritual person. So I'm not like a very normal person like other people. I'm very spiritual. This is a concept that I kept in my head. I have created a boundary, and I think I'm superior than others. So here also you don't have simplicity. Because of a certain tag that I have created in my head, I try to live up to that, And I think others are not, so spiritual as I am. So lot of these concepts and tags that we create, they are also stopping. So being simple is being not messy, being systematic, being more efficient, focusing on, this is like a magnifier. So you have a magnifier and it focuses on exactly where and what is needed, but the channelizing that energy. But if you don't need anything, what is the point of having energy? So I definitely want to get better tomorrow, but at the same time, I want to be in the stage where I'm very content with what I am. By this balance, what happens is, even if I don't get what I'm dreaming of, I want to get this after 10 years. But after 10 years, if I don't get it, I still am very happy of this whole procedure, the process that went for 10 years. But you can definitely expect a lot of these, they appear to be contradictory in the spiritual practices. But they are not if you go to the root of it.
Dhanyavada, Rakesh Acharya.
Yamas and niyamas, they have to be worked on simultaneously. I mean, if you look at the scholarly explanations about Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali, there are some, they say first yama, then niyama, and then, it's like a step-by-step to samadhi. But in reality, what they mean is, it's not like yama and then niyama, it is yama, niyama, obviously they are together, but their main goal is to say that, for example, don't practice pranayamas without getting into the asanas. It is of no use. If you are practicing pranayama without the support of asanas, then we have to define what is pranayama. That's a different thing. Okay, so not just the breathing techniques, pranayama is a lot more than that. Only then it is applicable. So that's why it's step by step, but yamas and niyamas should be practiced simultaneously. Yeah. So being honest and being kind, many a times we think that this is being dramatic, being hypocrite, that though you know the things, like you know for a fact that, like I was saying that my wife and I say like you look good, but is it being manipulative? It is not. Why it is not? If you are saying something a lie, then it can be manipulative and you are misleading. You shouldn't be lying, but you can put your thoughts in a very polite, kind way. That's communication skill. And a lot of times we get confused with this, that I'm being honest, that's why I can be little arrogant. When you say on the face, not being kind, not being polite, if you don't have the right words to use, then you are not really being, you are not practicing ahimsa. In the name of honesty, you are being arrogant. You can be, it's a very thin line. You shouldn't be manipulative, but it's a very thin line in between, to be very polite and put it in the right way. It happens, just give me a minute. It happens in the teacher trainings, for example, when somebody is teaching a class and a short class, and I'm assessing it, and they are teaching the asana, and they're not really good, and I see there are maybe 50 mistakes in one class, but she is trying. This is the very first class that she is teaching, so I would not say that's a pathetic class. I would still say that was good, but my idea is motivation. That was good, but these are the things. I'm not just saying that was good, but if you look at this, this is one issue, this is the other one. See, this one we can make this better, this one I can make like this better. So in these ways, we can make this class better. So though I am correcting her, I'm not really saying that you are wrong. and you had these mistakes. I'm motivating and at the same time I'm correcting. So you can put nice ways, nice communication so that you are not being very rude. Sorry, yeah, we are running out of time. Om.
Dhanyawadaha, Rakesh Acharya. It was a wonderful session. We at Tattvamasi hope, and it has served to be a kindling motivation to many of us while elaborating a practical aspects of yogic philosophy. Once again, we are grateful to Samyak Yoga and Rakesh Acharya for this wonderful session. Thank you. We will conclude this session with a Shanti Mantra. Please keep your hands together. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Krishnarpanamastu. Dhanyawad.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Meshi.